So like we say, this is the tagline, right? Universal Automation is the ultra-fast, simple, and lightweight automation platform for PowerShell. And we kind of like to break this into a few features. So first off, universal automation is all about having simple background jobs. So we wanted to build an automation platform for PowerShell, and the primary function of that, we just need to be able to run PowerShell 6 or 7 jobs in the background in Windows. More or less something we heard again and again is, I just want a simple task scheduler-like functionality for PowerShell built around PowerShell. So that's really what we're going for here. We mentioned scheduling, so of course you need a scheduling engine. It would be that cron expression, continuous scheduling, or just point-in-time scheduling. PowerShell first, so the idea here is everything you'll see today in universal automation is built around PowerShell. So if you know PowerShell, you're going to be able to use universal automation. It's not, we don't want you to have to come at this automation platform having to learn universal automation itself as a platform. We don't want you to use how to parse YAML or build some crazy XML. Hey, if you know PowerShell, you can do it all. Persistence is important too. So while it's very nice to have a simple, lightweight job runner application, we do want to be able to save that job history, be able to audit that later, go in and view the details, how my jobs ran and when. And I love this one. It's Git integration. So source control is something that, as PowerShell people, we've been talking about for a long time. And when we were putting together universal automation, the question came about, how do we integrate with source control? Is it going to be something that we do after the fact? And actually what you'll see is universal automation has its own kind of internal integrated Git engine under the cover. So anything you do in universal automation is automatically put into a Git repository, automatically behind the cover, whether you use an external Git repository like Azure DevOps or GitHub, or if you want to use something else, no matter what, that is going to be controlled via source control. And there's a lot of flexible options around that. And finally, something almost as a bonus, as a debug that we were doing originally building this, is it does have a built-in dashboard. So we mentioned Universal Dashboard earlier. We actually built the UI that you'll see today for Universal Automation with Universal Dashboard. And basically what that means is end-to-end, we're all about PowerShell. So we're going to show you a little bit of that as well, but just know if you're not super comfortable in the PowerShell command line, we have a dashboard for you too. And finally, and I always love to throw this question at Adam, and I'm going to do that again here. We want to talk about the why. So I'm sure many of us are familiar with automation platforms. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with Windows Task Scheduler that you technically can use with PowerShell. And even since we've announced universal automation, we've got some questions like, hey, why would you build this? There's already solutions that do things kind of like this. Adam, I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, sure. So kind of where we saw the gap was kind of in between those folks using Task Scheduler and then kind of those folks that have like moved all the way to something like Azure DevOps or Jenkins or something like that. Kind of the thing that we were seeing a lot of was people building solutions similar to universal automation and universal dashboards. So trying to, run PowerShell scripts that they had and provide some sort of interface over the top of them and make it really easy to schedule them or allow their help desk to invoke these scripts that they've spent all this time working on. So we've talked to some other people, and they were talking about how they have tons of task scheduler jobs or PowerShell scheduled jobs, that kind of thing. And this is just kind of something in between those two realms. So rather than going whole hog and kind of doing Azure DevOps with this hosted service that you have to use YAML for and all that kind of thing, we wanted to build something that was like really specific for PowerShell, that took advantage of all the PowerShell like goodness around custom PowerShell hosts and that kind of thing. And that's why we built UA. So you have this thing that is built for the language that you are writing your automation in, and then you kind of, because of that, you get all these cool features based on that. So that's kind of why we built it. So kind of in between those two places.
Makes sense to me. And you know what, Adam, you mentioned PowerShell goodness there, and I think it's time to show people what the PowerShell goodness that we were talking about actually is. So I'm going to stop my share and pass it over to Adam. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to go take a quick overview, spend a couple minutes looking at the product, see what this thing actually is.
Cool, thanks, Lee. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, that's universal automation running in PowerShell and my dog. So this is a universal dashboard that is built on top of the universal automation platform. So it's using all the universal automation commandlets to access our universal automation platform. So as you can see here, I haven't branded my dashboard or anything like that, but I have a login page set up, and it's actually going to log into universal automation. So once that loads up, you'll see that this is our universal automation dashboard. So at the top there, you'll see that we have a bunch of different statistics around jobs that have run or failed or are running today, that kind of thing. Upcoming jobs being jobs that are scheduled. And then we even have this time saved statistic where you can populate a value on each one of your scripts to kind of say like how long would it take to manually run this process. And then universal automation will automatically calculate how much time you're saving based on automating that particular sequence of steps. So if we look at the bottom here, we have our running jobs. Right now I have a progress script that's currently in a running state and a couple other scripts that are in a waiting on feedback state. And I'll kind of show you what that means in a second. We also have past jobs, so jobs that have completed or failed, how long they ran for and who they were executed by, that kind of thing. If we go to our scripts pane, you'll see that we have all the scripts that we have inside Universal Dashboard. These scripts are just PS1 files. We haven't really done anything special to modify them for Universal Automation. The idea is that you can use your existing scripts, put them in here, and then you get a lot of like PowerShell goodness just from the Universal Automation platform. On our schedules tab, we have the different scheduled jobs. So I have 3 scheduled jobs here. 2 of them are set up with cron schedules to run every 2 minutes. And then the middle one here is actually a continuous schedule. So that one will run as soon as possible. So as soon as it finishes, it will start another job. In this case, I have configured a delay of 10 seconds in between those job runs. Additionally, we have things like variables and secrets you can set up, that kind of thing. So I'm going to show you an example of what one of our scripts looks like. So if we click on a script and go to the script page, you'll see some information about our script. This hello world script, all it really is just outputting the string hello world. And you can do things like add tags to your scripts. You can schedule your scripts from here. You can also look at the commit history for Git. So as Lee said, that Universal Automation is kind of built around a Git repository. So there's actually a Git repository that is always kind of generated with Universal Automation. And later in this demonstration, we'll show you how to connect to a Git remote so that you don't actually have to manage things through Universal Automation directly. You can actually use a Git remote to not only manage script content, but also the configuration of Universal Automation. So if I give this particular script a little run, it's going to ask me for some confirmation, and it will go out and it should run this script for us. It actually probably finished. And you can see Hello World has finished now for us. And if we look at the job output, you'll see some things about the job, such as like how long it took to run, when it stopped and started, if it had output, that kind of thing. And here is an example of the output window. So in this case, we just had a simple string go to the information stream. But if you're using things like the debug stream or the warning stream or the error stream, those will show up here as well. The other thing that we have is pipeline output. So I'll show you actually a better example of that. If we go to our past jobs, we actually have a hash table that we're outputting here. And if we look at our pipeline output here, you'll notice that the pipeline output is captured as an actual object, a CLI XML object. It's serialized there. So if you're familiar with scheduled jobs in PowerShell, you can kind of do the same thing where you can use receive job to actually get the pipeline output from a particular job. You can do the same thing in Universal Automation. So we actually built some dashboard functionality around that, so you can actually pop open that pipeline object and look at the contents of that hash table. The same thing works with PS objects or any other object you might drop on the pipeline, so you can kind of see the properties and values of those properties directly in your dashboard. Some other cool things that Universal Automation integrates with are things like read host and write progress. So you can see this script right here is our progress test script. And if you're using write progress in your script, what you'll see is if you go to your particular script that's running, it'll actually output that write progress directly to the dashboard. So you can see the progress of that script right here. So what's cool about this is not only can you see in the dashboard, we can also get this information through the PowerShell commandlets or REST API, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The other thing that's kind of neat about universal automation is that it can integrate with things that request feedback. So on this job, it's actually requesting feedback for a read host call. So I can enter some text. So hello, everybody. And when I hit submit on this, it's actually going to provide that read host feedback to this particular script. And then that script will complete running. I don't think we have this updated yet to automatically update that. But now you can see that the script, or what I typed in via that text box right on this dashboard, it actually sent that into the PowerShell script, and then that PowerShell script continued. So this is kind of like a very basic example, but what you could do is you could request feedback from a particular script where, select a machine or like enter some additional information for a script and then require a user to go in and type that information in. So the other thing that you can do inside your dashboard is also take parameters. So if we look at this parameters script here, all it is a script that has a param block on it. So you can see I take 3 test parameters here, and then I just output those test parameters to the command line or the pipeline. But you could take any series of parameters. So if you're familiar with Universal Dashboard, there's actually the new UD input component. It actually does the same thing as this. So it will generate a UI for you that allows a user to enter these things into a text box, and then from there it will execute this script. And you can see these parameters are actually listed here, and then the type, because I didn't specify a type, so they're system.object. If I click run here, it's actually going to pop up my manual script execution window again, and I can type in those parameters. So I can say hello universal automation. And if I click confirm, it's actually going to run this script. So if we go to our running jobs, it's running the script 29. And script 29 took in these 3 parameters. And you can actually see the value of those 3 parameters and that they were output to the command line here. So in this way, you can kind of, parameterize your scripts, allow people to enter information into your scripts, and then make it pretty dynamic. So that's
And
kind of
I have to note there, because I'm such a fan of it, is the fact that when we're using PowerShell scripts, it's literally the param block. So the same scripts that many a PowerShell administrator has been using for years and years, the things that they have in all of their existing scripts, modules that they might use, like they all use these types of param blocks. This isn't some kind of secret universal automation syntax language that we devised. We specifically, like we were saying before, built it just for PowerShell, so you can take your own scripts, use the way that you write scripts, which is the PowerShell way, and do it that way, and not have to build some kind of crazy JSON YAML string to define input parameters, right? And I just love that. It's great.
Yeah, it's a cool feature, and we kind of hope to expand on this a little bit so that we can kind of provide a little bit more of a operator view. So right now you kind of see a lot of information. You see all the running jobs and that kind of thing. But it'd be great to have some sort of view that you could email a link to whoever, and they could go to your page, use your tool without actually having to understand that universal automation is kind of running this whole thing. So that's kind of our next step there. So, but I think that's a pretty good overview of where we are with some basic universal automation stuff. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Lee.
All right, sounds good. So I am going to reshare my screen. And there we go. So that kind of functions as, the overview. We've talked about universal automation. We've got a feel for what it looks like and some of the main components and some of the interesting features that it has. Now what we're going to do is just take a little bit of time here just to do a more practical example. So we've talked about it, but now maybe let's take that a step further and kind of give you some examples of what this thing in action may really look like. So for the sake of example, I have a script in my ISE that me as an operations person has put together. And again, this is just a quick little demo, but what we're going to be doing here is looking at a series of services that are running on my machine, and I'm evaluating if they're running or not. So I ran my little script here, and I can see it's scanning these critical services, and it's reported that the worldwide web publishing service is not running. I'm going to go ahead and start my script and run it again. And now I can see it's not complaining anymore. So what we're going to do now is we kind of have this very, very simple script. It also has some Slack notification going on at the end if there's some problems. But what I want to do is show you what it takes to get this script in Universal Automation, set it up on a schedule so it's basically constantly running and checking these services. And then if something goes wrong, just seeing what it does when the script kicks in. So I'm just going to bring up my Universal Automation instance here. And again, we're going to do this whole process in the UI. So everything that I'm showing you, with no exceptions, just know that I can do it in the PowerShell command line, all with PowerShell commandlets, but we're doing it in the UI because it looks nice and it demos well. So what I'm going to do, I went to my scripts page. I'm going to create a new script. So I'm just going to call this the monitoring process, monitor critical services. And like we saw, we have our script control. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste that script. Execution options. So I can tell Universal Automation how to run my jobs. I can do this on a per job instance, or I can basically just define it on a script level. So I'm going to say, let's go with 7.0 RC2. I'm going to finalize that. Something you do see in the UI too is you can specify when you change things, when you create objects, we literally say commit message because that's the message we're actually going to bind into our source control. I'm just going to call this first commit. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that it automatically opens my script. So now, pretty much with a simple copy paste, I have my script in Universal Automation. I haven't run it yet. I can see my script. I can go in and edit my script if I want. And then I can see the history of changes on the script. But just to get this demo rolling, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run it once. We should see it pop into the running job, or it's actually already done. And kind of like we were seeing before, I can view the output. And like we saw in the ISE, hey, all services are okay. I didn't find any services that are down. Okay, perfect. So as an administrator, I've tested my script. I know it works from a pure PowerShell perspective. I see that it works in UA. I'm going to go ahead and throw a schedule on this. Now, I could give it a cron schedule. That's kind of like our default method of scheduling. We have a, air quotes, easy schedule feature just to kind of provide some of the more common scheduled times that we see for people doing automations. But in this case, I'm just going to do a very simple continuous schedule. And because this is a demo, I want to run the script every 10 seconds. So now my script has a schedule, and it's already gone ahead and kicked off a job. And basically what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to kill that service. So now this service has stopped, and the next time that your job runs, which is probably going to be this execution right here, in the instance of this script, I can see now in the outline it is complaining. So it says it's detected services that are not running. And in the case of my demo script, I also have it output the actual service object that it detected as being not running to the pipeline. And like we talked about before, I can now go and browse all the property objects of the that came off the pipeline. So in this case, it's a service. There's not a whole heck of a lot of interesting stuff in there, but just know that we have that capability. So, okay, so this thing's running every 10 seconds. It's detecting that there's issues. I'm also going to make another change to my script just to kind of give this a little bit of an integration story here. I'm going to turn on alerting, just the note to myself. And basically by changing this flag in my script, what I have my script set up to do is actually go out and post to our Slack channel whenever it detects that this job, or sorry, this service is down. So by now it is probably run. I just saw another completed job has gone in there. And now I can see in my Slack channel, it's actually posting saying, hey, this service isn't running. And I just got another post to Slack. So every 10 seconds when this job runs and it finds that the service is not running, I'm going to get a little message about it. So finally, there, another one came in. If I go ahead, start my service back up, I don't need to have the dashboard open. I don't have to be logged into the dashboard. I don't have to be doing anything on PowerShell console. My jobs are being run in the background. So we had 3 messages. I haven't got any more since. And then if I come and look at my last executed script, it should say, hey, yep, everything checks out A-OK. So the purpose of this demo, again, was just kind of step you through taking a script from ISE all the way through putting it into universal automation, scheduling it, and run it, and just kind of tinker around with it a little bit, just to kind of give you a distinction between what it would take to do this in Windows Task Scheduler and maybe what it would take to do in some other automation platforms where you have to spend a little bit of time learning the platform itself and utilizing the different scheduling components. You can kind of see that you can get up and running with this thing pretty quick. If you know PowerShell, the goal here is you shouldn't have to really learn universal automation. It's really built for PowerShell people, so your skills are directly transferable. So that is the practical, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put my script into universal automation demo. Now what we're going to get into, which we hinted at earlier, is kind of a closer look into the out-of-the-box source control that we offer and some of those very specific Git features. So at this point, I'm going to stop the share, and Adam is going to pick up the share, and we'll jump right into that demo.
All right, cool. So yeah, I'm going to show off how to integrate this with a remote Git. So one thing that we kind of talked about a little bit is that Universal Automation maintains its own Git repository like internally. So even if you don't configure it for a remote Git, it is actually using Git, so you can see all your history and that kind of thing. And if you go into, by default, app data or local app data, you'll see that there's a repository folder here. And if you pop that open and actually open something like VS Code or Git Kraken, and then pop open something like GitLens, what you're going to notice is that we actually have our Git repo here. So you can see all our different scripts that we've been editing, that kind of thing. So our whole file history here is on this local Git repo right here. And if we pop over to Azure DevOps, I actually have this Git repo up in Azure DevOps, this UA test for Git repo. And if we look through here, you'll see that these are all the same files that are local because it's just cloning this Git repo and then pulling and pushing from that Git repo when changes are made either in the remote Git repo or on the local UA instance of the Git repo. So if I look at some of this stuff, first of all, you're going to see your PS1 scripts. They're pretty much like unchanged. So your PS1 script is just checked into the Git repo, and then we execute that script as is. What is a little different is you'll notice that a UA folder has been created, or a .ua folder. And then for each script, you're going to see a metadata kind of PS1 file. And within this metadata file, we have a bunch of information that you might have noticed inside the Universal Automation dashboard. This script info object actually maintains all the kind of metadata about that script. So the name of the script, the description, how long it would take to run the script manually, any tags you've assigned, or any schedules you've assigned. So you can see here, I have a cron schedule set up to run every 2 minutes in the American Denver time zone. So you could actually come in here and edit that stuff. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on this Hello World script click Edit in Azure DevOps, and we're going to just change this to Hello Everybody, and then commit that. And then we'll say that this is committed via webinar, and we'll commit that to Azure DevOps. So the way that this works is Universal Automation is kind of polling the Git remote to see if there's been any changes, and it'll do a pull to pull those changes down to synchronize the local Git instance with the remote. So if we go over to our Universal Automation, we should be able to click on our scripts. I can actually check in here to see if it actually synchronized. So it looks like it did. And if we click on our script, now what you're going to notice is that if we click on the script, it says hello everybody instead of hello world, which is what we saw originally. So this was actually synchronized up from the commit ID. So you can see that we're on 4.4a up there. And then if I looked at the history here, you can see that maybe that's not the same commit ID. I guess it might not be the same between the remote and the local. But either way, you look at the, oh, that's just wrong. But you can look at here that this was committed via webinar. So we have this DB6 commit ID, and that was committed via webinar from the actual Azure DevOps instance. So it actually synchronized down. And then if we run that script, it's actually going to output hello everybody instead of hello world, because we've synchronized that value down to Universal Automation. Yep, so you can see it says hello everybody. So the other thing that's happening is, like we said before, this Git repository is always maintained by Universal Automation. So if you make any changes inside the actual dashboard, it's going to go the opposite way. So for example, if I wanted to add a variable, you can see I have a couple of variables in here. These variables will just appear in your scripts kind of automatically. So if you want to add a new variable that may contain some sort of configuration options, you can do that. And if we create that variable, it's actually going to create that variable in Git, and we can actually look at that if we go to our repository here. And I think I actually have that open. If we look at this variables file, you can see that there's a couple different variables that have been defined. So all three variables that are in Universal Automation are also defined in this variable.ps1. So now if our git sync has run, which hopefully it has, we should be able to go up to here and then click on the variables here. And if we look at the changes here, you'll see that I now have those three variables here. So previously there were only two variables, but I made that change in the local Universal Automation Git repo via the dashboard, and it actually created that variable and then synchronized it up to our Azure DevOps instance up here. So that's kind of like how it goes both ways. You can either, work via the Universal Automation dashboard and actually have it synchronized to a remote, or you can kind of use like DevOps best practices and check in your changes via pull request to Azure DevOps or any other Git repository you may be using, and then do things such as code reviews and that kind of thing before you actually push it to your Universal Automation instance. So there's no reason that you need to necessarily go directly from your Universal Automation dashboard to manage it. You can manage it through Git. One other thing that I didn't check or touch on when we were talking about kind of the overview is that Universal Automation has a REST API built over the entire top of it. So all the Universal Automation commandlets actually talk via this REST API, so they can be used remotely, that kind of thing. And that allows you to actually integrate with whatever system that you have that has an HTTP client that you can then call Universal Automation to pretty much do anything in the system, create new scripts, check the Git status, check for job output, that kind of thing, invoke jobs with parameters and all that stuff. It's all happening through the REST API, so it's all accessible remotely. So I think that is a good overview of kind of how our Git integration works. One thing to note is that we don't really have a good merge strategy right now. So in the beta version, it's not, if you end up with a merge conflict, it's going to fail. But typically what other platforms do is they usually have select which one wins kind of a scenario. So if for example, there was a merge conflict between Azure DevOps and the local Git repo. You could select the Azure DevOps instance to win in that particular merge conflict. So that's probably the direction we'll go with something like that. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing. It looks like there's some chat activity going on. So Josh has asked, does UA only pull from the master branch? And that is true, correct. So right now, UA only pulls from the master branch. We've actually had some feedback already that people want to not only pull from like a different branch, but they also want to be able to pull from folders within the same branch, depending on how their configuration of Git is set up. So we might add some more configuration options to the Git stuff. Right now, the only options are what's your Git remote and give me your credentials for the Git. So I think we'll be expanding on some of those Git configuration options soon. So we do have Swagger built on top. We do have all that Swagger documentation, but we are not using Autorest right now. There were some things that I didn't like about the auto-generated Autorest stuff that I wanted to build a custom module with. We're actually using kind of a lightweight REST client right now to kind of wrap those APIs. So I would like to use Autorest if possible. And I think as it matures a little bit, I think we'll kind of focus on doing that because it'd be nice to not write all commandlets. Yeah, so are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll hand it back to Lee. All right, cool. Lee, it's all yours.
All right, sounds good. And there's a point there I just want to reiterate too. It's the fact that we talk about the ways that you can interact with universal automation. You have the UI components where you can click through and add schedules. We have what I said before, the PowerShell commandlets where you can say new UA schedule and parameterize, throw in your script, throw in the schedule that you want, and it's there. And likewise, if you have teams who are more dev focused, you can literally just use the Git integration. Like Adam says, you can do pull requests, you can do DevOps, you can do dev proper code management to manage all that without having people having to go click around in the dashboard or having to go and use the PowerShell commandlets. Once you have your schedule set up and your script set up, you can literally interact with the pure code and then kind of build that on top of your existing test and QA and DevOps processes, which I think is really cool. So we've showed you a couple different demos. We've talked a lot about what universal automation is and what it does. We are in public beta right now. So if you go to universalautomation.io, you can actually that page will have a link to try the program for free right now. So it is in beta. When you get the application, it basically gives you a 30-day time frame to try it out and play around with it. We are accepting feedback. We have
one note on the licensing. We just changed that, so it's not a 30-day anymore. You can use it as much as you want, up to 100 jobs a day, and I think 3 concurrent jobs at once. And then the paid license will give you just unlimited use of it, sort of thing. So we're just kind of changing our licensing model in terms of all our products so that we kind of have play for as long as you want, no trial licenses, and then if you choose to kind of move forward with it, you can.
Perfect. So it's even easier. So getting universal automation is literally as easy as installing a PowerShell module. Like, to give you a spoiler, install module space universal automation, you're good to go. You don't need to give us your credit card number. You don't need to give us all your personal contact information. You don't need to worry about any of that. Just go universalautomation.io, install the module, start playing around with it, and send us some feedback. Speaking of feedback, we've already had a number of customers testing out in beta. And we've also had some private previews going on, and we've actually got a lot of really good feedback so far. Some of the folks who gave us these quotes might be on the call, I'm not sure, but just know that people are getting pretty excited about it, and it's really nice to see. And I think more than just any kind of positive feedback that we're getting, the most important thing for us is feedback in general. So we do have a GitHub issue board. We have forums. I'm going to give you links to all of that here before the end of the presentation, but just know that if there's anything you say, yeah, I don't really like this, or hey, if we tweak this thing or change this behavior, at least gave me an option to do things a little bit differently that fits my processes. We're totally open to that, and that's really how we build product at Ironman. Is it's all really based on feedback, more or less. And we do want to spend a little bit of time here to talk about the actual roadmap of this product, kind of where we're at and where we're going with it. So just to give a slight bit of history, this whole product, this idea was kind of born back in August of 2019 at a bar, pretty much at a bar called Powerhouse. Coming up with the idea, Adam and I, we've worked together in the past. We've done consulting around a number of different automation products and platforms. And we basically always had this wish list of things that, oh, it'd be so cool if my automation product did this, or if I didn't have to deal with this other thing, or, oh, this thing is really great, but it's missing this key feature. So we always had this kind of wish list, and we were just in a place with where we were able to more or less put together something pretty quickly and pretty comprehensive that we think is going to work out for a lot of people out there. And that puts us where we're at now. So here in January of 2020, at the time of recording, we're in public beta. That public beta will continue for about a month from now. So again, we're having the public test it out. Again, it's free. It's very easy to get. We are actually intending to release this as a real live product that you can buy, purchase, and use in an unlimited number of jobs and all that, like we mentioned with the licensing before, in February. So it is coming up. Following that, again, we kind of build products really based on our user feedback more than anything else. So we're kind of going to be more or less in a holding period, responding to feedback by doing webinars and workshops like this. We're already getting a ton of really good feedback that we want to respond to right away and build in our product. And we'll always be doing that. But the other kind of focus that we'll be spending time on is the so-called enterprise features. So this is the idea of, hey, maybe I want to store my job history with Microsoft SQL Server that I can attach to. Maybe I want kind of a distributed agent deployment, so I could have many different agents connected to one UA instance as well. Those types of features are what we're looking at as well. But again, continuous improvement, continuous support, and then adding on many of those enterprise type features. We are about to open it up for any questions, if you had any questions on anything. But before we do that, I do want to just put the links up here. Again, universalautomation.io. If that is basically will link you to the product page on the website with all the links to get all the things that you could possibly want at the top of that page. We also have a forum. So actually a very active forum. We keep having to up the subscription level that we have with a lot of super fans in there that will, you post a thread and people will get on it right away. We do have a documentation site for Universal Automation too, so this isn't up to you to figure everything out. We do have a doc site with getting started and information about all the commandlets and stuff like that. And then finally, the GitHub page. So github.com/ironmansoftware, pretty easy to find. We have a public issue board, so if you find a bug or if something doesn't work or if there would be an enhancement that you want, it is open. We do respond to those with comments and discussion, and it's very likely that if you give us an idea that would really help you out, there's pretty good chance that we'll end up implementing it in the product. And then finally, you can follow all of us on Twitter. You have Adam and Lee's Twitter handle there. We have the Ironman software account on Twitter as well. It's not really used that much right now, but I would expect to see in the next few months more and more activity. We'll be doing more things with that, announcing some of the events that we're going to be doing and things like that.